button pop up.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So we're going live now. Hopefully my children don't interrupt.
It's a nice background you got there, Brad. So.
It's my curtains.
Brad likes to go with authenticity.
Or natural, that's right.
The natural built environment.
What you see is what you get.
Okay. We are live in about 3, 2, 1. I just need to click a magic button. Hopefully it works. I've just started trying Microsoft Edge, and I do find it's a little bit buggy. And we should be live now. And I'm just going to quickly say good afternoon, Frankston. It has been a mostly beautiful sunny day. I've been out and about. If you've seen the blue t-shirts, then you know that I've been down your street. We're very, very fortunate today to be talking about a topic that's very close to a lot of people's hearts. And that is the question of the role of local government and the environment. And specifically, we're going to be talking about the environment around the Frankston municipality, but also, I think, looking a little bit more broadly around the region. We have back with us today Sue Baker, Peter Malone, Brad Hill, and Justin Turner. Justin is actually phoned in for today's conversation as he has had some overruns with work and couldn't get back to a video feed. But even more importantly, we are joined today by David Cross. David Cross is quite a well-known campaigner and activist around the environmental networks in Frankston and more broadly across the peninsula as well. David's here in his capacity as chair of the Friends of the Environment, sorry, is it the Frankston Environment Friends Network?
That's it. Exactly.
That's it. I'll let David introduce himself, but he's got a fascinating background, and he's also here to hopefully provoke us a little bit and to help us dig deeper into some of the key policy issues around the environment. Over to you, David.
Thanks very much, Stephen. And hello, everyone. My name's David Cross. I've been chair of the Frankston Environmental Friends Network for around about
mostly beautiful
12 years now. And I have I think we're made up of about 23 different friends groups. Some of those friends groups are very small. Some of them are a number have hundreds of members. Frankston Beach Association, Candid Creek Association, Friends of Langwarrin Fauna and Flora. These are some of the groups that are in our network, which is sort of an umbrella group over these individual groups. Our primary function is communication between our different friends groups and communication with management authorities such as Frankston Council, occasionally Mornington Shire, also Melbourne Water, Parks Victoria, and so on.
Thank you very much, David. Now, given that you're working across a whole range of different groups, what do you think are the sort of top 3 to 5 environment-related issues that candidates need to be thinking about in this election and the next term of council? Okay,
a few ideas. I've sort of been giving this with a thought today, but I think as everyone's probably aware, or I think all the candidates are probably aware, that it was either late last year or early this year, our current mayor, must have been very early this year, declared a climate emergency, which had a lot of support from the general community. I think we need to be looking at what council's role can be in mitigating climate change, what we as individuals can do, and what we as a collective on council can do, or the councillors once they are elected. Other things, we need to be really aware of our local flora and fauna. We have so many wonderful little pockets right throughout Frankston that we really need to be very mindful of, that we need to protect it. One other issue that is a burning issue to me is there's a significant amount of area in Frankston that is actually classified as green wedge, which has various restrictions on what can be done with it as far as housing and industry and so on. We are very keen that we protect the green wedges as much as we can. Once they're gone forever. There's been incursions into it over the years, but we're really pleased that Frankston Council about 3 years ago took up the poison chalice, so to speak, and started developing their green wedge management plan. This is something our network have been nagging for quite a few years for council to develop it. So many other local councils have done, and we've been able to help steer that in a certain direction. It's now been finalised, and it's gone to the it's about to be heard by a planning panel, I think, in a few months. We are really keen that the green wedges are managed the way as the state government has dictated, and we are very against changes to the urban growth boundary, which may have impacts into changes to the green wedge. So they're probably the three key issues as far as I'm concerned: the green wedges, our knowledge of our local fauna and flora, and what we can do regarding mitigating climate change.
Great, thank you very much, David. I might go to you, Peter, first, because I know that given your occupation, this is an area that's quite dear to your heart as well. And just wondering if you can share with us some reflections on what David's put on the table.
Yeah, look, thanks a lot. You might notice I wore the green shirt today, not the blue one. It's got National Geographic down there somewhere. Look, the environment's very dear to my heart, and protection of the environment, because I absolutely agree with David. When it's gone, it's gone. There are a couple of aspects there to it. Actually, one, I've got too many questions, of course. One question I'd like to ask David is, you don't have to have qualifications to love the environment and want to take care of it. However, having some qualifications and experience, I guess, is going to help. So how important do you think qualifications are to people when they're, I mean, you can pursue a love of the environment by taking certain actions and supporting certain actions, but I imagine qualifications are of some importance, perhaps to yourself and others who are dealing with the environment. So that's my first question, but I'll throw a little cheeky thing in after that as well. And that is, yes, the global climate emergency is huge. It's a huge thing. But in tandem with that, as I know you'd realise, is of course our environmental degradation problem. Yeah, I've said in other forums where I walk along the beach, and I love the beach, and I love that, you know, little sort of zone environment. A lot of plastic there. I pick it up, I put it in a bag. There's always a job for me, picking up plastic. So I'll just leave it with those two things.
Okay, thanks, Peter. The first one was the qualifications. I don't have an environmental background regarding qualifications. I run my own small business in technical documentation, but I am very passionate on the environment, which is how I suppose I got into this. I'm fortunate that I'm back onto a little bushland reserve, pretty close to the heart of Frankston. So you don't need to be a botanist or a scientist in any respect. Yeah. All you do need to have is a passion for our local wildlife and our local flora. and which I do, but I'm not knowledgeable. I go to working bees and I rely on the experts to tell me what are weeds and what aren't weeds. So
Yeah.
what do I pull out and what do I leave there?
Great, thanks. Sorry, go on, David.
Yeah, and sorry, what was your second question there?
The cheeky second bit was the global climate emergency. Absolutely, and councils should sort of lobby state government, do all they can for it. But the environmental degradation side of it, where we can't forget about environmental degradation. And I think you talked about green wedges, but there's also waste, and there's plastic on beaches and other things like that. I just wonder if you got a comment about the importance of tackling that sort of big issue.
Yeah, sorry, I just had a phone call.
Yeah.
Just when I didn't want it.
Yes.
So that perspective, yeah, we do need to really address, look at how we can address this. And it's a case of, it comes back to individuals, and a lot of it comes back to education. The council, they're sort of the middleman. They look at us as a whole, and we need to be able to consider, councils need to be able to consider lobbying state and federal governments, and we all need to work as a team.
Yes. Yep. Thanks for that. I like that you said work as a team there. If we're going to get anywhere on this, we need to do that.
All right, thank you very much for that, David. Just before I pass to Sue, I just want to make people aware that we are getting some questions and comments that are coming through. But just to let our viewers know, I'm a little bit short-handed today in terms of monitoring those. So we won't forget you and we will come back. Sue, what are your reflections?
Yeah, well, this is a massive topic that we've picked today, and in preparing to come to the conversation, I was reminding myself on the subject of climate, I guess, all the things that we've noticed since we've been in lockdown. So globally, what the impact has been of us reducing our nitrogen dioxide emissions, sort of all that pollution into the air, but also from an animal flora fauna perspective, just where we're seeing animals and sea creatures that we haven't seen them before, simply because the human footprint has shrunk, and we're not traveling to as many places. And I'm just wondering, David, whether you think what we've gone through in the last sort of 6 months or more might actually have a very helpful effect on attitudes towards people supporting some of the environmental dilemmas and imperatives that there are at the moment.
I'm actually fairly positive in that the issues we faced the last 6 months has really woken a lot of people up. I can drive past McClellan Drive, for instance, past the Langwarrin Fauna and Flora Reserve. It's got a little car park on McClellan Drive, which would probably hold, I don't know, maybe 40 cars. You can go past there just about any time now, and the car park is chockers, and there are cars out on the road. At the weekends, there are literally 100 cars parked along the sides of the road on both sides. People are going out to the reserve, and yet you can walk in that reserve when all those people are there, and you can walk for 5 minutes without seeing anyone. I think there's a lot of people now going out there, and all other reserves. My little reserve, I can wander down through there at any time now, and I'll find people. Prior to this, I could walk around for an hour and maybe see one person. So there's a lot more people are starting to take a little bit more notice, and I'm hoping that once life does get back to normal, that they haven't forgotten about, hey, we've got this wonderful bush on our doorstep. We've got these animals who live in the bush. Let's look after it.
And I'm going to sneak in a cheeky second question as Peter set the precedent there.
The bar, yes.
Yeah, and it's all to do with the amount of information that is actually available. I had a look at the Western Port Biosphere website, which includes Frankston and Mornington Peninsula and Candid near Sheerham. So that was a whole education for me, and just learning that actually it's a UNESCO site. So,
Yes.
you know, we have some international standing in terms of the environment that is in this area, and a responsibility at that level to support it, as well as nationally and sort of locally. So that's really important to also, I guess, it's getting that information out as well. There's a plethora of information on the council website, including all sorts of activities for kids, which I think I shall embark on, because I think they teach me a lot of things about the environment as well. But I guess what my question is, how do you recommend engaging with someone, with the council? What's the mechanics of that? How does that actually work? Can you give us some insights?
So from a local perspective, we, as I said, I just happen to chair the Frankston Environment Friends Network, but we have a team of some fantastic people who are incredibly knowledgeable. We have various people who monitor our council website regularly. They monitor the planning department's postings of upcoming development, and we also monitor the agenda for the public meetings. So if there is something that jumps up and attracts our attention, we will have a quick meeting and decide that, yes, okay, this is an area that we're pretty passionate about. Let's go and lobby council, and we'll register to speak at a meeting. We quite often contact individual councillors and talk to them. Quite often these are issues that they are fully aware that we are passionate about. We don't, we're very respectful and mindful. We don't go in guns blazing, and quite often we'll actually make a point of registering to speak at council to support the decision the council has made, and pat them on the back and say, hey, this is great. We were very supportive of the ideas that you've, of whatever's been approved or is going before council.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So we work on two different levels, I suppose. We talk to the councillors, but we also have a very good relationship with quite a few council officers. Particularly our group, for instance, we have a good relationship with our local council ranger for our particular reserve, but we also have fairly regularly the council officers, the rangers, the head rangers, they will attend our meetings and fill us in on what's happening locally. So it really is a very good, cooperative and communicative association.
Great, cool, thank you, thanks.
Thank you very much again, David. Brad, what are your reflections?
A lot of you, are aware I was a councillor before 2008 to 2012, and I'm very pleased to see David still there doing his job, and he does a terrific job. He made me aware of a lot of elements of our local environment that I didn't know. We've got the Ramsar listed wetlands up in Seaford. Ramsar is a convention that recognises various wetlands around the world for bird habitat. Did you know we have birds there that migrate from Russia every year? The far reaches of the Northern Hemisphere. They're at Western Port. We've got the southernmost mangroves in the world. And as has been indicated, they're replaceable. But look, specifically to the council, the climate emergency was, a major, high profile, a declaration the council made this year. And look, it was a landmark. It was if I may say, a feel good moment as well. And there is stuff the council's able to do to affect climate change, lobbying, advocacy, and practicing what they preach. But I think another, issue that is still loitering in the background is the issue of the green wedge, and the council has endorsed a green wedge management plan, as David indicated. However, there are still advocates and lobbyists out there trying to have areas of the green wedge repurposed, you know, for something more productive, as they may state it. There's efforts underway right now to have some of that turned into industrial land, you know, in the name of jobs and economic progress and COVID recovery and all that kind of stuff. You know, I'm not particularly a fan of that. You know, however they want to frame it, I do keep an open mind. I will listen, but all candidates need to be aware that that lobbying still continues, and it will come before them. Isn't over yet. And you know what? It probably never will be. You know, you can rezone and have your strategy and have everything in place and have it all signed off. But there are people who own that land in the Green Wedge. It isn't a national park. It's privately owned land. And if that land is rezoned into residential or industrial, it becomes very, very valuable land, right? So there's always, when there's a dollar to be made, there's always someone out there who wants to exploit that.
Yes, there certainly is. Now, as a small business person myself, I certainly sympathise and understand what some of the lobbyists are going through as far as redeveloping or looking at trying to redevelop the land. There's a few points I'd like to point out, though, is that one of them is, one of the areas that they want to look at is it's up reasonably close to the southeastern purification plant, or whatever the technical term it is nowadays. It's got a it's classified as a major hazard facility and has a 1,000 metre limit, threshold limit, which excludes having large numbers of people over an extended period of time. To me, a lot of that rules out being able to put industry there. Another issue is that this particular land was also identified as potential, I've just got to read this, potential strategic agricultural land in the state government's current project to protect agricultural land around Melbourne. It's covered by Schedule 2 of the significant landscape overlay, and it aims to preserve some of the vegetation we've got there, particularly river red gums. So there's certainly issues there. The other thing was that the Green Wedge land, it falls under the state government commitment to a permanent urban growth boundary. Our current Labor government, the previous Labor government, and the previous Liberal National state government, they all rejected changing the urban growth boundary. So that's going back over about a 10-year period. The government, the current government today, the urban growth boundary is not set in stone. It will have to change over time. But to change the urban growth boundary, and which would have an impact, a significant impact on the Green Wedge, it's not going to be happening in the foreseeable future. So I really think that we have an awful lot of commercial and industrial land in Frankston that is, you know, a case in point is that large block of land, the old Nilex factory in Frankston Dandenong Road. That would be ideal for several smaller factories, manufacturing facilities.
Yeah.
We've also got to get rid of there's so many of our industrial areas have been rezoned commercial. So Carrum Downs, there's a lot of commercial places in there where you've got the little mums and dads printing places, the panel beaters and so on. They've got 3 people working in 200 square metres. that's not industrial, that's commercial. We've really got to change our mindset and reclaim some of that land and convert it back into industrial land where you'll get 100 workers working in 1,000 square metres.
If I may sneak in my question number 2.
Yep.
It seems to be the agenda for today.
I'm holding you responsible for this, Peter.
So the argument that's often made by those who would like to see the green wedge developed is that, you know, we're only talking about an anomaly on the edge of the green wedge. It sort of sticks out. It's odd. It's obviously an error, you know, in the green wedge scheme. It's only a little bit. Jobs are important. You know, what's the counter argument to that from a person like yourself?
Okay, well, I'll certainly reinforce the fact that jobs are definitely important. There are ways of we need to increase employment in Frankston because there's so many people who do move out of the area to go to work. The other point you've sort of raised as far as it being an anomaly of the green wedge, look, that's not for me to really say. I don't believe it is. I believe the green wedges were set up many years ago for a particular purpose under the Hamer government back in the 1970s to protect our lifestyles and so on. Some of this land is being allowed to be degraded, whereas there's actually still reasonably good, primary producing type land, market gardens and so on, cattle agistment, that sort of thing. So there are other opportunities there. I'll come back to a point I made before that once the green wedges are gone, they are gone forever, and that's one of the issues. If we get little bits and pieces being nibbled away, it can be taken by stealth, effectively. A little bit here, a little chunk there. It slowly will degrade, and there'll be more arguments from, hang on, this is there's a pocket here that's it's out of place. Let's rezone it. What we also have to be mindful of is in the future we've got a lot of potential growth in Frankston from a population perspective. The greater the population, we need trees, we need bush, we need places that people can escape to, whether it's private land or public land. When I say public land, private land, it could possibly be horse agistment or whatever, where people might have run their livestock there. We've also got a lot of areas that are ripe for developing into more sporting complexes and so on. I don't want that to happen wholesale all the way through, but we've got to be pretty careful of keeping our green belt there in Frankston. We've got some fantastic places around here. We've got to protect as much as we can for the well-being of our residents now and into the future.
Great, thank you very much, David. Justin, you've been very patient there, just want to give you an opportunity now to offer in your reflections and thoughts as well. And then we might just try and move towards more of a discussion that picks up some of the points that we're getting in the discussion feed as well.
Absolutely, thanks. David, hopefully there are a couple of quick questions, and I know I might be overlapping some of the answers that you gave as well, but from, I guess, looking at it selfishly, from an individual perspective and from a council perspective, at a local level, what can we do in terms of, both the climate emergency and protecting the flora and fauna that we've got? And I know the protection of the flora and fauna seems fairly straightforward, but I guess looking at sort of longevity as well.
Okay, I
know it's very broad. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's actually it's such an obvious question that I actually haven't given too much thought to. prior to this. I suppose what we do need are councillors who are going to come on board who understand the requirements of protecting our local environment, and somehow looking at ideas of mitigating climate change. You know, as far as I'm aware, as far as I'm concerned, Frankston Council are actually doing a fantastic job now. As far as I think I've forgotten, it was about 5 or 6 years ago they won Australia's most sustainable city. You know, they've certainly picked up a few accolades over the years for some of their forward thinking. In the basement of the Frankston Arts Centre, for instance, there is a tri-generation power setup that I can't remember the details of how it actually works, but it certainly reduces significantly our power load for the Frankston Arts Centre, which obviously has a big impact on the footprint from carbon emission and so on. So we need people on council who can think outside the box and support ideas of sustainable practices. I mentioned before education. That's another really important thing. We need to educate people. Yeah, so many people do the right thing, but there's an awful lot we don't know about as well. We've got our new, well, it's not that new now, 5 or 6 years, I suppose, the new recycling centre out in Skye. That's a fantastic asset, and these are the things that we need to make sure that they're being utilised as efficiently as possible. And protecting, I suppose, the local little pockets we've got of greenery around the place. Be mindful of when people come together with development applications, it's not going to have an impact on the immediate neighbourhood or impact on too much vegetation in that area.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And if I can ask one more question, in terms of education, I guess in an ideal setting from your group, how would that look? Because I know it's, you know, it seems fairly straightforward, but I guess it's
not straightforward at all.
To put it in principle, yeah, it's look, I guess it's a fairly perplexing subject. So we can say, yes, we can put out all the information in the world, but how are we delivering that from, I guess, more so at a council level in order for the community to be able to receive it on, and I shouldn't say in a way that everyone can understand, but I guess the principle's still the same.
Yeah,
I guess the kiss scenario.
Yep, you're quite right, and yeah, education is incredibly difficult, and particularly from a council perspective. I think the biggest issue is the people who want to know about it and want to do the right thing. They're going to get involved and learn, and that's going to be 2% of the population. The other 98%, you know, a lot of them they're fence sitters. They think, oh yeah, that's probably a good idea. We should probably be looking after this or that or the other. And then there'll have a few who don't care less. And they're probably the ones you really do need to educate. So I note that, you know, Frankston Council have run various programs. They advertise at local media, various programs where they ask people to, you know, participate in forums and so on. Particularly nowadays with our restrictions, so that's a good starting point. But there's got to be other ways to think outside the box of trying to educate people. You know, one of the biggest issues we have at the moment is the impact of domestic animals on our native birds and wildlife. The Frankston Council has reasonably recently updated the domestic animal management policy. One thing that we've always been concerned about is that there is no curfew on keeping cats indoors. The council keeps saying, well, it's everyone's responsibility to keep their cat confined in their property. That's fine. Yeah, my cousin, for instance, has a cat, and he has put cat barriers to stop them. His cats have never been outside his property apart from going to the vet. There are ways of doing it. We back onto a reserve. We quite often wind up with dead animals, dead birds particularly, in our backyard because neighbours on both sides have dogs. So the neighbourhood cats go through our property to get into the reserve, which is very annoying. We really do need to be able to clamp down on things like that. So just coming back to the education side of things, we need to make people aware that, okay, if they have a cat or a dog, maybe there should be more documentation of what they can, what their responsibilities are.
Great, thank you very much, David and Justin. I suppose that gives me the opportunity to kind of give my own reflections, and this is probably the quietest our candidates have been on any of these discussions because what you're saying is so interesting and engaging, David. So thank you for that. I mean, it strikes me that some of the key things that council needs to be doing, aside from rather than leaping to redeveloping or developing green wedge, is looking at how we reutilise some of the brownfield sites. And I know you mentioned the Nilex one. I was out there, I think it was last year, when we had a sort of running fire through the place on a very hot day. But also the opportunity to redevelop a lot of the industrial area along Wells Street as well, much of which is very outdated as well. And there are other pockets, I think, around Frankston City that we should be looking to reutilise rather than going straight into developing new areas first. So I do take that point. Oliver Hill, who's the candidate in West Ward, I don't know if you've come across Oliver Hill yet, but Oliver Hill has asked a couple of questions. One is about the green wedge, so I'll come back to everyone on that towards the end. But the other thing that Oliver has asked is around about the question of when the last time was that council actually declared a new reserve. And David, if you had an idea of what new reserve might be suitable for Frankston, either through an acquisition or property the council already has, what would it be and where would it be? I suspect Oliver Hill might be trying to get some kind of council approved blue wedge in the bay there, but I'll let him speak to that.
Okay. Yeah, look, I really don't know about any recent establishment of any reserves, but we certainly do have a lot of reserves. I think it's about 57 reserves and open spaces in Frankston. So we're pretty fortunate. What we do need, and I was really pleased that there was that last little pocket right on the very northern fringe of the CBD, opposite the police station, which was potentially up for sale by Frankston Council earlier this year. And fortunately, it's now been, the sale is off, and it's an ideal little pocket to put because there's no green space around the CBD, not in the immediate future, in the immediate vicinity. If I had my way, I'd actually bulldoze the Southeast Melbourne, Southeast Water building. It was an eyesore. It should never have been built there. I'm all for high rise, but I believe a high rise should be back over the station area. And as you get closer to the beach and Candid Creek, it goes down in size. We lost Central Park in Melbourne, in Frankston, many years ago. It became a car park, and then the new theatre complex was built there 15, 18, 20 years ago. If we could pull down, this is all pie in the sky stuff, but if we could pull down Southeast Water building and turn that into Central Park, where you're driving along the Fern Highway, you look to the west, you've got a nice park with Candid Creek and then the sand dunes on the beach. That would be a fantastic vista, and that is right in the very centre of Frankston. It'll never happen, but we've got a dream, don't we?
I love your vision.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Go on, Justin.
Just quickly, there's something that you mentioned, Stephen, about the reuse of the sort of brown area. And it's a question for David, is what would, I suppose, the environmental impact be in terms of pollution if we were to have, I suppose, multiple sites around, as I guess, supposing a central site for all of our industrial to go into?
I think, yeah, it's a good point, and I think sometimes some of this is swings and roundabouts. In that, where, I mean, as I said, you can go down through the industrial areas of Seaford and Carrum Downs, and there will be lots of these very small factories. There's nothing of any great size or substance there. There, you know, many years ago, probably one of the biggest factories, maybe apart from Nilex, was the Yazaki factory in Seaford, where they employed quite a few hundred people. There's no factories that I'm aware of, and I might be entirely wrong here, but there's no factories that I'm aware of that employ more than a couple of hundred people at the most. If that is the case, and that's the way we're always going to be, well, why can't we redevelop some of these brown sites to make the most use of them? Okay, they may be a little bit fragmented in some areas, but that's the case. To me, I would rather have a little bit more of an inconvenience from fragmented pockets of industry around the place, as opposed to fragmenting even more the green wedges that we have.
I guess, leading on from that, my question is in your opinion, would it be better or worse to have it all centralised, or have it, sort of redeveloped as it is? And I'm not advocating either way, just to be clear. It's just out of interest.
Yep. Now, I take that point. Obviously, ideally, it would be great to have it all centralised in one area. You look out over the Dandenong, South Dandenong area, which was a lot of it was open land right for development from a industrial and commercial perspective. That's fine. That was sort of a greenfield back 15, 20 years ago. I'm sort of thinking more about the areas around the Jayco factory and so on there. We don't really have the luxury of that. We've still got some of our green wedge land, but we're surrounded everywhere. We really don't have the opportunity to have a start again with a fresh sheet. So therefore, I still believe we do need to make the most of the industrial and commercial pockets we have throughout Frankston, and make the most of what we do have.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, David.
All right, thank you. Look,
just going to say, I think we should give Sue a go to say something.
I was just about to suggest that. Thank you, Peter. Just before I hand over to you, Sue, and maybe David, you could reflect on this a little bit as we, as Sue's posing her points. Some people seem to think that you're either an environmentalist or you're pro-development. I suspect the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. I think less about the kind of the green wedge and some of the current industrial sites and the parks and reserves. It does strike me there's an opportunity for council to really drive better integration of people, environment and place, particularly as we start to look at things like redevelopment of the CBD and so on. So just as I hand to Sue, if perhaps you could weave that thought into your answer as well.
So is that over to David?
That's over to you, Sue.
Oh,
That's
over to me. Oh, over to me.
We're going to double down.
No, well, I think what you've said, Stephen, is really valid in terms of that mix of different use of land. I mean, I walk around the Northwest Ward where I am, and there are pockets of disused land. I'm thinking of the Overport Road piece of land where the railway crossing was taken out. I don't know who owns that piece of land, but it's opposite where the car sales showrooms are. It's just a dead bit of land. Every time I walk past it, I think, I wonder who owns that, and could that be turned into a bit of a green space or something that's more attractive than just a derelict piece of land. So I think it would be really great to get an overview of what are all the pockets of land, what's the overlay, how could they be used, and from a sort of a more strategic overview, understand what the opportunities are, either for industrial or commercial areas or development to produce jobs, or is it about parkland and reserves? So I think it's having an open mind to have a mix of uses of land is where we need to be thinking and having conversations.
Yes, I agree totally. We, as I mentioned before, we're reasonably well off for open spaces in a lot of areas in Frankston, but there's certainly areas that could probably do with more. But we also do need that. We do need areas that can be repurposed or redeveloped for job creation. It's a case of think smarter, not harder, or work hard. What's the saying? Work harder, not work smarter, not harder. Yeah. Sorry, it's been a long day. Where by thinking outside the box, and I've used that term before, there are other opportunities there. We can actually use some of what we already have. The little area you just mentioned there, Sue. I don't know who owns that. I suspect it is probably leased by the level crossing authority, and what will happen to it later on, I don't know. To me, it's surrounded by it's right beside the freeway. It's that triangular block I'm referring to that bounds onto Sky Road. To me, that's probably a good location. Maybe not for a park, because I know the golf club, the Long Island Golf Club, is just a few hundred metres away with lots of trees and so on through there. There's a couple other little parks not far from there. But so that piece of land there is probably too small for commercial, for industrial land, but I'm sure it could be used for, commercial purposes, or small factories or whatever. Even small organisations like your printers and so on, and panel beaters, who are taking up all this valuable space in our so-called industrial land now. And that way you could, some of their smaller premises in, at Carrum Downs, Seaford Way, could be repurposed to larger industrial, more industrial type facilities.
Just if I could come in.
Of course.
Yep. Just from the point of view of the natural environment, okay, disaggregation, very small pockets, as you probably know, aren't particularly useful for wildlife. What we need is to aggregate, and this is sort of a bit where this conversation has gone to arrive at, and corridors for wildlife. And also we're talking about, we've got species that need to be protected, up at, Langwarrin Fauna and Flora Reserve, and other places as well. Now, we need to do something about that. So we need to try and increase areas. Small pockets aren't going to work very well. So we need to do that. We need to start looking at investment in protection measures. We talked about cats. Well, I know, and I have done in the past, borrowed a cat trap from the council, nicely provided and nicely taken away. Now, there were cats that were stray cats, probably coming from reserves close to where I was living at the time. There were also a lot of domestic cats, cats with collars. They were there. So bylaws, other places have laws, bylaws that say, you will have your cat inside and your cat belongs on your property. Otherwise, maybe it should be, I love cats as individuals, don't get me wrong. We're very good friends of some cats. Their owners are responsible. They keep them inside and they have cat runs. Now, cats are so insidious for wildlife in Australia, anywhere. I think we need strong bylaw really with this, is my opinion. And the provision of cat traps are a good idea. So aggregation of land, protecting wildlife, there's ways of doing it. It's a matter of knowledge and will. The education side I'll throw in quickly. I do work at the TAFE. I did teach field zoology and ecology, biology, etc. We did a program a while ago. You would have known about it, I'm sure, David. The Thin Green Line. Remember that?
Yes. The
Thin Green Line. Yeah, it was great down at Mornington Rosebud campus, and yeah, we have Diploma of Environmental Management for National Park Rangers and others, and it worked really well. And teachers of environmental things, myself, a lot of others, are very happy to throw our time in after hours and have programs, you know, for the public to come and see. So I think council engaging with the TAFE would be a great idea with stage 2, stage 3. And as far as environmental things are concerned, there's people who are really willing to give their time. So.
Or you could almost have a junior ranger program that was supported by council if you were
Well,
to kind of
that'd be great. Yeah, great idea. We have the ranger program, the Diploma of Environmental Management and others, but yeah, for sure, schools engaging. Yeah.
Yep, that's definitely the way to engage with the young people. For instance, our young Citizen of the Year for this year, Michaela Goggin, she's going to be featured in the next Western Port Biospheres newsletter coming out in a couple of weeks. She presented to the Rotary Club of Frankston the other night. She is absolutely amazing. She heads the school's eco team, and yeah, amazing young lady. So I've got, you know, really great hopes for the younger generation coming through. We are starting to get out there, and we're engaging with schools. I'm the nearest school to me, primary school, is Frankston Heights Primary School, and for about 15 years now, 12 years or so at least, we've had them celebrate School's Tree Day in our little reserve, and the kids love it. They've now planted going on to 6,000 plants in our little reserve. Our reserve is 12 acres, it's only small. Something you touched on before, Peter, that I haven't even mentioned is connectivity between some of these pockets. This is something that is we really do have to look at very, very carefully, and we need to plan strategically as development changes and progresses. And I'm not against progress at all, but we do need to make sure we have that connectivity between various areas for our wildlife. Yeah, it's fine for birds, but it's not so much fine for a lot of the other animals that rely on jumping from tree to tree and so on.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, David. I'm conscious of time, so I want to just touch very quickly on a couple of issues. Incidentally, Oliver Hill, again, candidate for the West Ward, has offered to take all the cats into the West Ward. I'm not sure the RSPCA would be on board with that, but I do appreciate what you're trying to do there. Very solutions focused, Oliver.
You can take them for a long walk off a
just to also ensure that Oliver's aware that I did do my homework. A couple of things that I kind of want to reflect on before I kind of go around the screen. One is I was really surprised to see that tree canopy cover in Frankston City is actually declining. And that combined with the issue of the sort of urban heat island effect. And in what I do for work, we spend a lot of time looking at sort of various causes of humanitarian crises and disasters and so on. And what we do know is that heat is emerging as increasingly problematic from a humanitarian or emergency management perspective as well. So it's concerning to see that Frankston's actually headed in the wrong direction. I suppose the flip side of that, and talking to some of my friends who are experts around climate change and the environment, is that you know, you do sometimes have to remove some tree cover in order to make things like renewables possible. So how do you get that balance right? But also, what does that then mean for urban planning and design in order to do things a little bit differently? And perhaps if I could throw that one to you, David, before we then do the the quick whip around the screen.
Okay. Yeah, it is a challenge. It really is a challenge. The decline in tree cover or canopy, that is certainly a major concern. There are, from an urban growth management perspective, we need to, again, work with what we have. We need to increase our density of residential density in strategic pockets. We need them close to public transport and facilities. We don't want to have this urban sprawl that is forever putting pressure on our more rural sort of areas. So that's where Frankston, the city itself, the CBD area, is ideal for being fringed by residential. It will make the city more vibrant, particularly in the evenings, plus also cut down on our carbon footprint by having people, if they need to travel by train, they walk to the station as opposed to driving. The potential of removing, extending the electrified line down towards Baxter, that is a great first step. We've got all that land tied up there that people are driving up from Mornington and Mount Martha and Somerville to catch a train into the city or somewhere. Free up that parking space. We need to, we definitely need to work smarter to try and plan our city.
Great, thank you very much, David. David, I'm going to give you the opportunity to do a bit of a close, but before we do that, our tradition is to do a bit of a whip around each of the candidates and give them a chance to say something. Hopefully it's relevant to the topic of environment and the role of local government. But Justin, seeing as you're on the phone, we might start with you.
Yeah, no worries. Well, look, yeah, I absolutely agree that we definitely need to look at some planning continuity, sort of growth, our conservation, and making sure that they all tie in so they're relevant, both in the short, medium and long term. I know the greenweed is obviously a contentious issue. I love where you touched, Steve, in terms of the tree cover needs in the city. But I think at the end of the day, what we really need to focus on, apart from having the ideals in place, is making sure that we got all the evidence and all the information we have. So at the end of the day, we can make those sort of evidence-based decisions. And it's about, obviously making sure that we protect what we've got, but making sure that, what we're doing, I guess, planning and moving into the future is also relevant and taking all of those into account as well.
Great, thank you very much, Justin. Brad.
Anyone who knows me knows I'm a very practical person, and I just want to say I share the vision and the outlook of David that we've heard today, very much so. But as an engineer by profession, my mind's always trying to work out how to turn things into reality and how to address the challenges, how to actually achieve an outcome, because a vision on its own without a plan to actually achieve isn't really worth much chop. So encouraging reuse of existing land for industry, a terrific idea. The challenge I see with that is that land's going to be a lot more expensive than existing greenweed land. It's all privately owned. Someone will have to come in and actually purchase all that property and do what they want to do, or they can just head up the road to Dandenong, where there's open space that's can be turned into industrial a lot cheaper. I'm not trying to poo-poo any idea, but this is the kind of stuff we have to have answers for. I don't know what they are off the top of my head.
None of us do.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Brad. Peter.
Okay, couple of things. Just for Oliver Hill, West Ward man, he's a certainty to get in there, by the way. We have had discussions about the TAFE. TAFE, you know, not a lot of heat from there, not a lot of trees. I've tried over the years, but I can actually assure people that that's going to be solved in the near future. We've had our stage 2 development, stage 1, so I'm jumping ahead of the gun. Stage 2 is coming along next year. So the concept is to have a couple of stories, but some nice big green space in the middle. And as long as I'm on the board, I'll keep pushing that because it's a great idea. The other thing I just wanted to quickly mention is I do wonder, David, you have a lot of friends groups and they're under your wing. I'm wondering what the biggest and most frequent thing is that they ask for that you find the hardest to deliver, to give them. I'm not sure if that, yeah, I mean, they're out there, there's lots of them, there's the bigger ones. What do they ask for most that you find hardest to deliver? I'll leave you with that one.
Thank you very much, Peter. Sue.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, David, for being here today. I think what I've got out of this conversation is this really tricky conversation about balancing out the urgent environmental and climate issues, which are very real, that both of those impact on our health and well-being as individuals, as people, but so does earning a living and having the money to engage and thrive. But to sort of square away both those things, I think it's education on all fronts and people really understanding the gift that we have in this particular part of the world and how we can actually best utilize it and achieve a number of things. So so thank you for your contributions today. It's been good.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, David. My reflection is that development and the environment don't need to be mutually exclusive, and actually we can do a lot better looking at that incorporation of people, place and environment. Clearly there's a lot more that council there's a lot the council's already doing, and there's definitely a lot more that can be done as well. And certainly we need, one of the things I'm really interested in picking up on going forward is that interconnectedness between the different reserve areas and parks where that's possible. One of the key lessons for me of the pandemic and the lockdown, though, is just how walkable Frankston is. And you know, it's actually surprised, that's from someone who's gone from commuting quite a lot to other parts of town, the realization that we actually have so much rich environmental values locally to us, and it's important we look after those, but it's also, I think, important that we find ways to make sure that people can enjoy them. David, I'm going to pass to you to give a couple of closing remarks, and then I'll just give people a quick update about Friday. But I just wanted to say on behalf of all of us, thank you so much for being very generous with your time. I know you're very, very busy, but it's been wonderful and very insightful having you join us for this conversation.
Okay, thank you, Stephen, for inviting me. I've really enjoyed it. I'm a bit disappointed that Oliver Hill wasn't able to join us. But anyway, it has been a worthwhile discussion. I'd like to thank the council candidates who have joined us tonight. It's really great to chat. A few things to think about is check out the council's biodiversity policy, the coastal management policy, urban growth, urban forest strategy, things like that. Just be aware of those documents, have a bit of a read, probably good bedtime reading, I imagine. So when you do get elected, you can come in with a lot of these plans and strategies that are already there and think about how we can improve our city. From as Stephen pointed out a moment ago, we've got to have a balance between the environment, but also being able to support people's lives. We don't want everyone to pack up and move out of Frankston to go to work every day. We need to stay locally. For a start, that improves the carbon footprint by having people working and living locally. And yeah, so thank you again for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Great, thank you again, David. It's been a real pleasure having you join us this evening. We're running a little bit over time, but just to remind people, we are back at 12:30 on Friday, where the topic, which I haven't told everyone else about yet, the topic will be public safety and emergency management and the role of council in that regard. I have reached out to a subject matter expert on that topic as well. We're just waiting to hear whether they'll join us. Otherwise, it'll be a discussion that we'll facilitate ourselves. Again, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Frankston, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
And I think we are now clear. I'll stop the recording.